a good small town candidates night. Nothing better way to have a week at 5:30 on a Wednesday night. What else to do? Candidates night. Our good candidates have two of them tonight, so they are going to be earning their keep as candidates. First of all, welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Dick Spotswood. I have the pleasure of writing a column in the Marin Independent Journal on Sundays and on Wednesdays. And I've been asked to be a neutral moderator of tonight's event, and I'm delighted to be helpful. We're going to tell you what the program is, so everybody knows and understands that the ground rules. The candidates have already had a lottery, very high-tech lottery. They draw up a card, they pick their numbers from the card, and the lottery is who goes first in introduction. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make an introduction. And we're going to start with Damon Connelly. Susan Adams is second, Toni Shroyer third, Judy Arnold fourth. Those numbers are important because we'll keep that rotation as we go out throughout the evening, so everybody has the same fairness. Nobody's picked ahead of the line. The tallest doesn't go first, or that sort of thing.
2 minutes.
2 minutes each. Then we're going to come back and we're going to have 4 or 5 questions. As traditional in these organizational meetings, the group that sponsors it gets to propose 4 questions. I have them. They're written out in advance. I have 1 question. And then we're going to go to folks in the audience. You have been already kind enough to prepare cards. I'm going to be going through these just to prevent duplicates and make sure that I can read them when they come up, and then we'll just take them one at a time. Each candidate will have 1 minute each to answer each question. So you've got to keep your time down. We have Jody, we have a timekeeper who's going to keep track of this?
Yes, right here.
The Honorable Deke will do so. Deke Welsh, everybody. He's brought his own bell. BYOB, thanks, Deke.
We should park him right.
Yeah, you should be closer to the center, Deke, if you could, so that they can see you and hear you and you can make gestures.
Where am I going to sit?
If these folks would all move down one, if Deke would take a seat.
Thank you, sir.
Easier.
Well, we can put them in front. It'll just block your view. Either way.
How about right here?
Oh, boy.
Right there.
All right, thanks, Deke.
First time.
At the end, at the conclusion, each candidate will have 2 minutes in reverse order from how we start to make a conclusion. We will end no later than 7:30, perhaps a few minutes earlier than that. That's out of respect for the candidates who have to drive safely to their next candidates' night, which commences at 8 o'clock. So you'll be out, and you'll know when you're out. We'll play by Rotary rules. We're really keeping track tonight. Deke, ready?
Yes.
Well, I'm ready too. So let's start out with the candidates. Remember, 2 minutes, and it's a pleasure to introduce San Rafael Councilman Damon Connelly.
Good evening, everyone. I'll keep this very brief. My name is Damon Connelly, and I first want to thank CSPP for doing the forum. It's not only allowing us to tee up a key issue for this campaign, but for our communities going forward. And that is to have an honest discussion about our county's finances. I serve as a vice mayor of San Rafael, and I'm in my second term on the San Rafael City Council. My timing was impeccable. I started right when the Great Recession hit. During my 6 years, I've been dealing every day with the tough fiscal issues that our communities are facing. I look forward to talking to you about my ideas and my track record on pension reform and other fiscal issues. I've also served as a school board president. I'm an attorney in the community, previously served as a deputy attorney general working on the Enron investigation, very familiar with complex issues, and I'm a mediator. My wife and I and 2 daughters have lived in the community for 18 years, and it's been an honor to serve. What I'm hearing and the reason I'm running is we need a change. We need a supervisor who listens, who puts the needs of residents first, and who provides effective leadership. We also need a supervisor who builds bridges, who brings a wide variety of people together rather than dividing this community. Business as usual is not working. The old model of simply electing officials every 4 years, letting them go off and make decisions with little input is no longer working. Our residents are more engaged than ever. Our local elected officials have to be as well. I've been a strong advocate for strong schools, neighborhoods, local small businesses, and the environment. and I've always made government responsiveness my key priority. I look forward to our discussion this evening.
Thank you, Damon. Susan Adams, Supervisor Susan Adams.
Oops, this is not coming over. Let me do this. Can you all hear me? I want to stand so you can see me. First of all, I want to thank the organizers for their flexibility in allowing us the opportunity to have 2 events tonight. There are a lot of people in the community that want to hear what we have to say about the county. And I want to thank Damon for outlining what it is we should have in a really quality county supervisor, because I've been doing that for the last 11 and a half years, building bridges, bringing community together, solving some really challenging problems. One of the highlights was the challenge that we had with the San Rafael Rock Quarry, and bringing that community and the business operators together, very contentious, very difficult discussions that resolved in 172 conditions of operation and relative peace in the community over the last 3 years. I brought the Marinwood community through an 8-year process before there was even one development application proposed to the county for development of the Marinwood Plaza. There were small meetings and big meetings, and now finally there's a proposal. We're going to have an opportunity with the community to go through a very detailed and deliberative process to see what finally happens at a derelict strip mall where there's been drug deals and graffiti and vandalism. I brought a grocery store to the community, and I have been able to bring a farmer's market to the community, and I think the community has been relatively happy with that. I think that with 40% of our county budget being directed to health and human services, having a professor of nursing on the board has been really important. I specialize in the health economics. I teach courses at Dominican University on that topic, and I look forward to the discussion we're going to have about the pensions.
Thanks very much, Susan. Toni Shroyer.
Hi, I'm Toni Shroyer. Marin County has been my home all my life. We have never been so poorly represented as we are today on the oh, you want me to stand up?
Well, let me just say that for a second. What we're not going to do is have everybody come to the podium, because it's just going to take too long to move about. But I am going to ask the candidates. We have an unusually large group tonight, and this is not a steep room. So to a great extent, if you could stand when you're answering the questions, I think they'll be able to see you, get a little feeling of where you are, and hear you better. So I'm going to ask you to stand.
Okay,
Restart.
I'll start.
No, start.
Hi, I'm Toni Shroyer. Marin County has been my home all of my life. We have never been so poorly represented as we are today on the current Board of Supervisors. How? From the supervisors spending our tax dollars for $300,000 to find out why people don't ride the bus, to a $50,000 park logo, to a $32 million computer debacle, and an $864 million pension liability. It's time we had change. It's time we had competent leadership, someone who will listen to you and put public safety first and believes in fiscal responsibility. As a businesswoman, I will do better. I started a grassroots effort, the Pennies for Police Dogs in Novato, where we brought the 3rd police dog and raised funds for the 3rd police dog and had them all narcotics trained. This has never been done in the history of Novato, and as a result, our community is safer. I currently serve on the board of the San Rafael Canine Association. When Novato had an uptick in graffiti, I started the Graffiti Abatement Volunteer Program. As a result, we have fought the blight successfully, and we continue to do so. I volunteer and fundraise for the Novato Public Schools. I love Marin County. I love Novato. I want to represent you on the Marin Board of Supervisors. I will do better, and together we can do a lot better. Thank you.
Toni Shroyer, thank you. Supervisor Judy Arnold.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I've always enjoyed getting out and campaigning and meeting you and hearing what your concerns are and trying to find solutions. In the past 20 years, I have worked for 2 state senators, served on the Novato City Council. That experience has taught me how government works and how to govern. I bring that valuable experience to the Board of Supervisors every day. Under the county's sustainability goals, under the economy, there are 4 E's. I founded the Marin Economic Forum and the public-private partnership to save the Novato Theater, creating more jobs and revitalization downtown. Under the environment, I worked with SMART to acquire 56 acres of prime tidal wetland to be preserved and used for mitigation for the train, saving millions of dollars. Under equity, I am the chair of a committee that was charged with writing an implementation plan to HUD on avoiding discrimination in housing and thus stopping a potential $68 million lawsuit like Westchester County had. And under education, as president of the board last year, I worked with nonprofits to form Marin Strong Start, which will, if passed, provide childcare, preschool, and health care to the 700 children in this county that don't have that. As vice chair of TAM, and I've obtained funding to extend the widening of the Marin Seminole Narrows to the landfill, thus alleviating a back up through Novato in the evenings and going north. This county has weathered the Great Recession. We have a structurally balanced budget. We led the state in instituting significant pension reform to curtail our future liabilities and received a AAA bond rating. I look forward to our questions tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. The first 4 questions are going to come from the organizing group, and I'll read them. And again, if you don't understand them or if they're not clear, please do not hesitate to say, hey, do it again. And the first responder on this will be Susan, then it'll be Toni, Judy, and Damon, just so you know. Question 1, Susan. Describe in your own words the California rule and why it is important to the pension debate.
Well, the California rule determines that a contract is a contract and a deal is a deal, and when you make the deal with employees, that once they sign on the dotted line and become your employees, they should have the expectation that that deal will follow them through until their retirement. There is some conversation and debate right now about whether or not that should be amended or reformed. But right now the courts have determined, up until this point, that the California process that we use now, and also in some ways federal law, supports that a deal is a deal and a contract is a contract. Now, are there reasons for us to take a look at our pension reforms? Yes, but none of us in cities and counties, and I would just like to add that, San Rafael is only 62% funded for their pensions. The county is 78% funded. And we have restructured our pension to Tier 4. We have done this with our labor at the table. Over the last 5 years, our employees refused to take any COLAs even to help us through that time. So we can do this with labor. We don't have to be heavy-handed in our approach to how we deal with pension reform. And there are a lot of opportunities for us to continue, but our county has a AAA bond rating. We're one of only 2 counties of the 58 in the state of California that has that. We have a low debt. We have a very healthy reserve. We just put $50 million into paying down our pensions, so it's less than the $800 million now. And going forward, we are saving $98 million per year on our pensions based on the restructuring, the downsizing, and the contributions that we made to our pension system.
Thanks, Susan. You had 2 minutes? Yeah. We're going to, generally most of the questions we're going to do 1 minute, but this time I'm going to let you do 2 minutes because it's only fair. And that means that Toni is next. 2 minutes.
Well, the California rule was instated in 1955, and I am opposed to the courts enacting laws. This is the job of the judicial system, so it's important that this is part of the conversation. However, I would like to talk to a labor attorney and get their views on the California rule. The real answer about the California rule is getting everybody together and putting our political agendas at the door and breaking bread with each other, because this is not an us against them. This is a we. The private sector pays taxes, and so do the public sector. And people seem to forget that. So we're all in it together. We have a pension problem. And the reason we're all here together tonight is because we care and we want to be engaged. I want to pursue the cap on pensions and look into that. The mayor in Napa had proposed a cap. I don't want to say what that cap would be because we haven't had a conversation like that before, but that's something to look into. I appreciate Governor Brown's 10-point solution plan that was, we got about 8 of those, so that's a start. And the READ initiative, which I'm going to run out of time, and it might be a question too, but that does address the California rules. So, and I do want to let you all know that I come with, I'm my own person. I have not received any money from any special interest group, only individuals and small Nevada businesses. I truly am an objective party.
Thank you, Toni. Judy?
Thank you. Really, the question about the California rule is that it's been decided by the courts. And so I would really like to go ahead, since Susan told you a lot about what our county has done for pension reform. I want to tell you what SMART did. I'm the current chair of SMART. And because we have a small, new organization and not a lot of employees, we like to say that we have the stingiest pension plan in California. Our employees pay 50% of the annual retirement contribution. If the contribution increases in certain years, so does the employee contribution. SMART and its employees will take no pension contribution holidays, and I'm sure you know what that is. SMART has also implemented a hybrid pension plan, matching up to 2% in voluntary employee contributions to a 457, which is the public equivalent of a 401k. We moved the retirement age from 55 to 60. The retirement benefit is based on the average of the last 3 years, which eliminates pension spiking, which happens in other organizations. And the pension cost of living COLAs is set to the lesser of 2 compounded numbers. So when we have an opportunity, we will do it. But the other thing, I just want to echo some of the things that Susan said. Our county has done more for pension reform than any county in California. We were the first to support the governor's PEPRA plan. Everything that he had there, we had agreed with. The only thing we had that he didn't agree with was we wanted a hybrid plan. So I'm proud of what we've done as a county, and I look forward to doing even more in the years ahead.
Thank you, Judy. Damon?
All right, look out now. So on occasion this evening, you're going to see me spend part of my time in responding to what Supervisor Adams says. I'm going to keep that to a minimum, but this is one of those times. She cited the statistic that the city is funded at about 61%. And the county 78. I believe the figure is about 73 to 74%. But the larger point I want to make is that's not the full story. The way the county gets its number up is actually that it has issued about $110 million in pension obligation bonds. And it uses that money toward its calculation of its funding level. It's literally as if you're borrowing money on your credit card, sticking it in your checking account, and boasting about how high of a balance you have. It's not the right approach. There's another piece we need to look at, and that's retiree health care. So it's 3 legs of a stool: debt, pension, and retiree health. San Rafael literally, according to the civil grand jury, is #1 out of 40 agencies in the county on its funding of its retiree health. The county is lagging way behind. If you elect me, one of the first priorities I will do will be to get the retiree healthcare system in the county into line. Now, as I mentioned, my timing was impeccable. But if you look at our tenure during my experience on the city council, we have led the way in pension reform in this county. Both the county and the city need to do more. But what we've done is we actually are now year over year fully funding our pension obligations, not relying on debt, not relying on reserves. I look forward to talking to you more about it.
Next question from the organization. Describe in your own words what the READ initiative, that San Jose Mayor Chuck Reed's initiative, would have done or will do, and why it's an important aspect of the pension debate. Toni Shroyer.
Well, the READ initiative is not going through in 2014, but the debate is here, and the debate and the discussion is not going away. We have 2 years to come to the table, find common ground, and work things out, and that I think is a really good thing. What Reed brings out in this initiative is that he wants to have more of a balance between the private sector and the public sector. What the fatal flaw I see in the READ initiative is I would like to see a caveat, a special provision for our public safety workers. Those who know Toni Shroyer know that my number one priority is public safety, and that's the good people of Novato's number one priority as well. So it was an aha moment when I was studying the READ initiative. I was sitting down with the Novato, anyway, they put their lives on the line for us. Thank you. Indeed, my mom used to have a cowbell too, so nice to
The READ initiative, as has been said, is not on the table right now, and I think that some of the arguments as to why their language wasn't accepted are valid. So I think that more can be done about that. I will just say this. I think that an article that Dick Spotswood wrote that said public unions could learn from private business Dick had an aha moment when he talked with Paul Cohen, the former carpenter, head of the Carpenters Union, and now retired. I think our county works like that today. Our employees work with us to solve the problems. When we entered the big recession, they forewent COLAs, equity adjustments, and we were all in this together like a family. Our county does not impose and go to war with employees. Our county works with them in compromise.
Thank you, Judy. Damon.
As has been mentioned, the READ initiative is tied up in the courts. It, for all intents and purposes, looks like it's not going forward at this point. So what I really want to focus on, and I think there are some legitimate concerns with it as well that have been mentioned, but really what I've been focusing on is the concrete steps we can take now. We were the first city in the county to actually achieve significant pension reform through our collective bargaining process. We also recently initiated a citizens committee, including people on all sides of the issue, to study how well we're doing now and what we need to do to add additional flexibility going forward. What they found is that the city of San Rafael has actually already implemented most of the changes through the recently enacted Public Employee Pension Reform Act, or PEPRA. You'll probably be hearing that term tonight. Specifically, we're adding more transparency. Our employees are paying a full 12% of their salary toward pensions. Year over year, no deficit, and we're bringing the unfunded liability down.
Thanks, Damon. Susan.
Thank you. And yet San Rafael has a downgraded credit rating as opposed to the county's AAA, Fitch, and Moody credit rating, which you don't get if you're not addressing your pensions. Regarding the READ initiative, I think it really began a healthy conversation. However, there were a number of things in that initiative that I think were problematic, including the very short timeline that an employer would have in working with their employees, unfunded mandate related to how that would be implemented, And most glaring to me was a lack of other tools or options that we could use at the bargaining table. For example, a hybrid plan or a defined contribution instead of the defined benefit portion. Those were not part of the discussion. And we are having those discussions with our unions at the table. There's no reason that we need to be adversarial as we're having these conversations. Our labor unions have worked with us, as Judy pointed out, in finding solutions, and we'll keep working on it.
Thank you. Next question. It's alleged that services are being cut, staff reduced, and taxes and fees increased as pensions and retiree benefits consume an ever larger portion of the public sector budget. Do you agree? And if no, and if not, please explain. And if yes, what would you do about it? We're going to start with Judy Arnold.
I hope we're not judged on how fast we get the microphone out. Our county this year has a balanced budget. 7 years ago, when we saw this problem approaching, we dealt with it. We laid off 11% of our workforce, either through retirement or through VSIP, voluntary separation agreement. We paid down $20 million. We have a $20 million fund balance this year. We reduced spending by over $30 million. And we accelerated payments to unfunded liability, which reduced our ongoing costs by approximately $3 million annually, as well as an improving economy, increasing general fund revenues. This year, we do have a balanced budget. For the past 5 years during the recession, we said to the employees, you need to do more with less. This year, we're saying you do more with a little more, as long as it's covered by one-time revenues.
Thank you, Judy. Damon.
Dick, would you mind repeating the question?
Absolutely. It's alleged that services are being cut, staff reduced, and taxes and fees increased as pension and retiree benefits consume an even larger portion of the budget. Do you agree? And if not, explain. And if yes, what would you do about it?
Okay, great. And first of all, I will just assure the audience that San Rafael's bonds have not been downgraded. We have a good credit rating. We also have been working through critical budget issues. Pension reform is part of the equation, but we actually reduced our workforce from 440 employees down to 380 employees during the Great Recession. I've been focusing on 3 strategies for the budget. One is to make changes as necessary in priorities within the budget, and we're working with the community on that. 2 is growing the local economy. And 3 is targeted revenue increases. Let me focus on the latter for 10 seconds. We absolutely are not putting any money toward pensions. We just passed or had a renewal of our general sales tax. Vote of confidence by the public, they increased the amount so we could go out and improve our facilities in town. We made the promise to the voters, none of that would go toward pensions. It's all going to go toward facilities. That's the kind of fiscal responsibility we need.
Thanks, Damon. Susan.
Thank you. Well, because we're one of the wealthiest counties in the state of California, if not in the country, the housing market and the revenues that are coming back in are really helping us to climb out of this recession a lot faster than other counties. Because of the restructuring we've done at the county, we are saving the taxpayers $98 million per year going forward because we are addressing the pension issues. And as a result of those extra revenues that we have ramped up our road programs. Many of you might have seen some of the new roads we're putting in. We're working on Idleberry. We're going to have a really nice new sound reducing, vibration reducing road going down Point San Pedro Road. That I took a leadership role in helping get through the quarry negotiations. And I just want to reiterate, if anybody has a question about how well city and county are funded, you can call the director of the Marin Retirement Board. The latest information I had was San Rafael 62% funded, Marin County 78% funded.
Thank you, Susan. Toni.
Deke, you're very soft on the bell. My mother used to just bang it. You're welcome to. Will we have increases in taxes? Yes, or we will lose services. I've heard that we have a balanced budget. Do we have a balanced budget? Yes, but we also have an $864 million pension liability. There is $32 million that the county put in towards the pension liability. I support that. But just think what that $32 million could have done. Now we're asked, which are good causes, a possible child care tax, emergency services tax, and a library tax. Well, if we had that $32 million, if we were more fiscally responsible, that could have been, those funds could have gone towards those services. What we need to do, and what I'd like to stop, is the constant and consistent wasteful spending by our Board of Supervisors. And just to add to the list, to the growing list of the computer debacle, the $50,000 park sign, et cetera, is an $850 an hour consultant so that the supervisors can play nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Toni. Next question. Next question. And Damon, you're going to start this one off. Do you think it's fair that public employees should have far less risk in retirement than do the people who pay for their retirements? Please explain. Damon, is there a question of risk?
So I think that's a bit of a loaded question. So maybe I'll approach it in a different way and state the obvious to some extent. We have a problem, and we need to address it. We can import some ideas as appropriate from the private sector, but we really need to look at our public sector system and come up with concrete solutions. That's what we've been doing. In 2011 and 2012, we are actually on record as agreeing with the governor's 12-point plan. We even took it further with some ideas of our own in San Rafael. More recently, in 2013, we basically signed on to a pledge. We will fully fund our system going forward year over year. And finally, 12%. We are at the maximum level of employee contribution right now. We're going to continue to bargain.
Thanks, Damon. Susan.
Thank you. Well, I serve on the California State Association of Counties in a leadership position, and we were actually at the table with the governor working on the 12-point plan. It's something that other counties around the state have been working on. I think that kind of experience and connection has helped me to be able to bring Marin's voice to the state level as we're making these kinds of adjustments and changes. But our employees currently, because of the last round of negotiations, they are paying more into their pensions now. They're retiring at older ages. We have 3-year averaging. We've downsized our staff by 250 people, so those are less pensionable bodies. We have no spiking with vacations. We're dealing right now with the pensions that were put into place decades ago, before either Judy and I were certainly on the board. And we are taking a very aggressive approach dealing with this. We have a citizens committee. It's the group that has organized this event tonight. They are regular visitors to our administrator's office and our board chambers.
Thank you, Susan. Toni.
Well, I think it's about being equitable and being fair. I don't think the private sector should have less risk, or the public sector should have less risk or more risks. We should be more in line with each other. And it also comes to what's happening now. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal, and it stated where since 2002-ish, the person that was making $60,000 a year in the private sector, and the same person doing the same thing was making $80,000 in the public sector. And we need to get things more in line. But what I bring to the board, would bring to the Board of Supervisors, is having a business sense and a business background and being fiscally responsible, and that's something that's currently lacking on our board.
Judy. Thanks, Toni.
People chose to go into the public service, into the public workforce, and that's a noble thing, just as going into the business world, to make profit is an okay thing too. And I don't think this is an us versus them. I think that we can work together, and here's an example. CSPP has come before our board many times with requests. We have responded to those. When I was president of the Board of Supervisors, they said, we want you to put the unfunded liability on our tax bill, and we did that. We worked with the Department of Finance. We were responsive. We're gonna get through this, and we're gonna get through it together.
Thanks, Judy. The next question actually is the only question I've written tonight, if I could. Each of you have been in public life for the past number of years, 3 in elected office and Toni in civic affairs in her community. And I'm looking for a specific answer to this question. We all make mistakes. My question is, can you tell us something you regret about actions you've taken in public life during the last 4 years? Susan.
Okay. Well, when I was very new to the board was when that computer issue came on board. And we had a committee in place. One of our more seasoned supervisors was part of that committee with our financial people. We had some public outreach, but probably not enough, and not enough depth in our department to really have the understanding about what our department needs were. Also at that time, we were trying to turn a pencil and paper accounting system into modern technology, and it was very expensive at that time because the computer systems were just coming online. Now we have Tier 2 system that we can use, and we're looking at the lessons learned are helping to guide us as we go forward. It wasn't $32 million, so that number has been growing exponentially as it gets reported each time. There would have been a cost to institute the program in the first place, but there were some overruns. So we've learned the lessons, I've learned the lessons, and we're not going to make those mistakes again going forward.
Toni.
Well, one of the lessons I've learned is the frustration with not being listened to by our local officials, our local elected officials. They're not listening to the public. And we had a really challenging project that Mrs. Arnold brought to the community called the Windover Apartments. And I was very, very concerned about the safety of that community. And what our officials didn't do is to provide best practices to make sure that everybody has safe housing. And I went through the chain of command, through the city council, through the county, etc. And hindsight being 20/20, I should have just gone directly to the state of California. And as a result, we now have better security, safer housing, and it took somebody to be a leader and say, hey, we've got some challenges here, we've got to fix them, and we've got to be proactive so that people can be safe. And what I would like to see is mandatory best practices for all multifamily units so that the developers have accountability and that people can be safe. Thank you.
Judy, the question relates to regret.
Yes, apparently my opponent didn't realize this. You're supposed to regret something.
We all do.
Yeah, we all do. When I was first elected to the, oh great, thank you. When I was first elected to the Nevada City Council, I had been in government working for 2 state senators, but not elected. And at the first council meeting I was at, we were going through the agenda, and I made a motion, let's just approve this. And then the city manager had to say, Judy, you have to hear from the public first. And I never forgot that, but I was ready to just go ahead, plan this, say this is what we'll do now without hearing. So I always listen to what the public has to say after that.
Thanks, Judy. Damon.
The toughest decision I ever made, and I can honestly say the only one that even years later I thought about, is at the height of the recession, we had to actually lay off 7 police officers. In thinking about it, I felt good about the process we used. We went out to the community. This is part of what I was talking about earlier about reprioritizing, but that was cutting to the bone, and my fear was, were we putting public safety at risk? Years later, we were able to make up for it. In a crucial moment, I actually came to bat when further cuts were on the table, specifically the downtown streets team in San Rafael, I stepped up and said it was not appropriate to cut. I went out to the community and made the case and came back and convinced my colleagues, and we kept the downtown streets team. It reminded me we have tough decisions to make in these jobs, and you have to feel in your heart you can do it. I will say I have the San Rafael Police endorsement, so maybe it worked out okay.
Thanks, Damon. Next question, we're going to go into questions from the audience now, and we're going to start with Toni. Do you support the ABAG MTC Plan Bay Area, and how else would you address growth and planning from the local level? Toni Shroyer.
I do not support Plan Bay Area for Marin County, and I have beat that drum for at least 3 years now. Plan Bay Area does not adequately address a lot of things, but the main thing for me is public safety. And Plan Bay Area does not adequately address public safety and our infrastructure. Water is another concern. Plan Bay Area also doesn't address affordable housing, and we've seen that with the millworks that my opponent helped bring in. There's 124 units, it's a high density housing, and there's only 7 deed restricted units. That's not even the developer's 80-20 rule. We've also seen that in the Wind Cup. Out of 180 units, there's only 18 deed restricted and only 4 or 5 that are truly affordable. So Plan Bay Area fails in that regard too. I believe in local control, and I'm an advocate for local control and bottom-up government versus top-down. Plan Bay Area is top-down government.
Thanks, Toni. Judy.
Thank you. Plan Bay Area was a misguided attempt to tie transportation with housing, thereby reducing greenhouse gases as in response to AB 375. It was a lofty idea. It failed in its execution. Our county sent 4 letters to ABAG saying your job projections based on population are too high. We want that reduced. When the final when the final plan came back to us, our numbers were greatly reduced. With Plan Bay Area, there is no mandate to do anything. That's clear. They stated that because that's another thing that the city said, wait a minute, we want local control. So it's a benign thing. It wasn't introduced well. There wasn't enough public involvement, and consequently, it's sort of a non-issue.
Thanks, Judy. Damon. Oh, yeah, Damon.
Yes. I approach Plan Bay Area not from an ideological standpoint, but purely as to whether it makes sense for our local communities here in Marin. And I had an opportunity to weigh specifically in on the issue with our Civic Center station area plan. I decided that Plan Bay Area did not make sense for our community, that the promise, in a sense, of additional funding, which was very uncertain, did not justify projecting high densification on our community. I took the lead in advocating that position and also in redrafting our station area plan to make sure that it was consistent with existing zoning, again with a lot of community input over the course of a year, bicycle and pedestrian improvements. So it's going to be a transit solution, but it is not going to be a gateway to densification.
Thanks, Damon. Susan.
Thank you. The question that is being asked in Plan Bay Area is, how do we grow in the region? We have 60% of our employees come into this county using 101 or bus transit. How do we grow as a region? How do we allocate ever diminishing sales taxes and gasoline taxes that haven't been raised in 20 years for road infrastructure, especially when people are moving to hybrid and electric? And it was trying to focus those areas that wanted to accept the extra growth with the promise of some extra resources. As I recall, Damon was one of the leaders in forming the station area plan in the first place around the Civic Center because of SMART, and I think you've been a supporter of SMART since its inception. And I think what went along with SMART was the average of 2,000 houses per station on the average through a SMART station to get federal funding. That was a lot. I was a critic of that.
Thanks, Susan. Next question. And this is going to start this time with Judy. Judy, how would you address the lack of sufficient workforce / low-income housing in Marin? Judy Arnold.
It's true, we do not have enough housing in Novato, in Marin County, for our safety workers, for our teachers, for the service personnel, and we need that, and that is a huge contribution to greenhouse gases. And I think that the way that we deal with it is we involve the community. We're out front with the community and say, here's a project, here's where we need affordable housing, here's what we can do, and we bring them along with it. I have seen that happen. The Millworks project in Novato, there were 400 moms that came there and said, we want healthy food choices in Novato, and we understand that will come with 123 condos. We want it anyway, and the council passed that on a unanimous vote. And consequently, it's revitalized our downtown. High density down in Novato near the railroad is a good thing.
Judy, thanks. Damon?
Again, one of those moments. I did not lead getting Plan Bay Area to Marin. In fact, Supervisor Adams was vice president of ABAG, the agency that came up with Plan Bay Area at the very time that it was imported into Marin. So I think it's important to get the facts straight on that. Affordable housing is an important value in Marin, and we need to provide a range of housing to people of different incomes. I have 2 daughters. Interestingly, I'm about to be an empty nester. I'd like to see opportunities for folks to move back to Marin. That being said, it has to be done in a Marin way, respecting local Marin values. I'd like to see alternatives to high-density housing along the freeway, including conversion of existing units into affordable, looking at second units. If there is some small development, doing inclusionary zoning. Senator Rafael has a great track record on it.
Thank you, Damon. Susan?
Thank you. One of the top 3 important issues in polls that are done for the community is the lack of affordable housing. And affordable in Marin County, affordable low-income housing means a family of 4 earning $65,000 a year or less. So those are our teachers, our service workers, our in-home support workers that are taking care of our seniors so they can stay in their homes. I've been leading my community with community leadership through a process to dream about what could happen at the Marinwood Village site. It's been an 8-year process, lots of community engagement and meetings. 2 market rate developers couldn't make it happen because the restrictions that the community was placing in terms of number of housing. They said, we don't make money unless we get more than 130 units on that site. So now there's a nonprofit developer that's targeting those 65,000 a year families that wants to put an application in for consideration of development. And we'll go through a process. What a developer proposes and what happens at the end are usually 2 different things.
Thanks, Susan. Toni?
Well, I believe in safe, affordable housing, and I think we really need to put the word safe and make sure that we have, again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, mandatory best practices so that people can be safe. Everyone deserves to have a safe place to live. I think there's better ways than how our regional government is telling us how to do things. I would like to see affordable housing scattered throughout the community. Novato is the #1 leader in affordable housing in Marin County. We have 3 Habitat for Humanity homes, which I support. We will be getting 10 more. San Rafael has 1. I'd like to see other communities in Marin County have Habitat homes. We have Gilead House, which is 7 units for single mothers. It's a successful model. So I would like to see more successful models. We have Nova Rose and different ways of doing things rather than just regional government's high density housing.
Thanks, Toni. Next question, Damon, you'll lead off. What do you see as the role of the county in dealing with some of the homeless issues facing some communities, especially San Rafael?
Great question, Dick. In fact, probably the #1 issue on residents' minds, certainly particularly in and around downtown in San Rafael, is homelessness. There was a recent issue with Ritter House. Let me just say for the record, we very much appreciate what Ritter does. There's a consensus now that it's outgrowing its space, and we need to figure out what to do to continue to provide services. There's 3 ways the county needs to step up. One is resources, and particularly mental health resources. The county has an extremely large health and human services budget, 46 million of which goes to mental health. We have a number of residents, homeless residents, walking around with significant mental health problems. We need to do more. 2 is chronic inebriation. The county is a level that needs to step up and provide the resources to address that issue. We're willing to work with them. And 3 is permanent transformative housing where people have a place to live. The county needs to step up.
Thanks, Damon. Susan?
Well, the county has stepped up. We are spending $14 million a year on homelessness. The majority of those funds are going into services that benefit the city of San Rafael. We pay $1 million to keep Mill Street open. That's operated under the Homeward Bound group. I was able to access 35 Section 8 vouchers called VASH vouchers for our homeless mentally ill veterans who are on the streets. All of those have been filled within the last 2 years. 10 of those individuals have found their way out of those into market housing, and we've refilled those. We're a major funder with the 18 Housing First programs that have taken 18 chronically homeless, severely mentally ill people off the street and put them into housing. And we have the Star Court, which has diverted almost 200 nonviolent mentally ill people into treatment instead of jail, lowering our jail population, providing them with working opportunities so they are taxpayer stably housed with wraparound services. And in fact, we fund most of the street teams program, the majority of that. So I think the county has stepped up. As a nurse, this is an area that's particularly of interest to me.
Thanks, Susan. Toni?
I would like Novato to emulate what San Rafael is doing is the Streetscapes program. Also, I would like to see Homeward Bound, this successful model of providing people from homelessness to life skills to work. I would like to see more successful Homeward Bounds in the county. Also, I think we should put more money into this challenges for social services so that we can combat homelessness. And the way we can do this is stop our dependencies on these high-paid consultants and put it towards the homeless.
Judy?
Thank you. Novato has done a lot for the homeless, and it's been an example. Years ago when the supervisors, none of which are here now, were looking at the homeless problem, Bob Romier, who represented San Rafael, said, let's put it in Novato. Well, you know what? We took it. And we Homeward Bound is an example for everyone. It works. And then their next one is Next Key. So you go into Homeward Bound and then they train you for a job and you work there. Novato's done a lot for that, and we understand there is a serious homeless problem in San Rafael. The county is meeting with San Rafael, and we understand we need a wet shelter or a permanent shelter, and that's what we're working toward, and the county is helping do that. We also, the county supports the Helen Vine Center, which is where chronic inebriates can go. So we've done a lot, we know we need to do more, and we're working with San Rafael to do it.
Thanks, Judy. Next question. Questioner says, no one really answered question number 4. And this, by the way, we start off with Susan. Do you agree that public employees have less risk in their retirement than private sector taxpayers?
I don't know how to answer that question. I think that currently our current employees are paying more into their pensions, and they're open to listening to some conversation about a defined contribution hybrid approach for our newer employees. Some people say we should be working toward having more private funding for our different positions. Well, if we did that, our county administrator, who is responsible for about 2,000 employees, if you compared his job as CEO to what other CEOs are making for 2,000 employees, I don't think the taxpayers want to pay millions of dollars for a county administrator. And there are a number of employees that we can't hire. We can't find the qualified people, especially in engineering, traffic control, and some of those hard to find spots. So we have to be able to maintain some flexibility, and the pensions are part of that program that attract people, quality people, to our workforce.
Thank you, Susan. Toni?
So the answer would be yes. The public sector, in my opinion, has less risk. Let me tell you what happened with me when I was an executive at JP Morgan Chase. We had great benefits, and then they were whittled away, little bit by little, lot by lot. Our incomes and our compensation package were hacked, and eventually the whole division and I was laid off. I do not want that to happen to anybody, and I certainly don't want it to happen to our hardworking public sector. So that's why we have to address this pension challenge, so that people don't get laid off, so that they get their pensions, and that we pay everybody their pensions when they're retired.
Thanks, Toni. Judy?
What happened to some of the private employers? For Enron, for some of these massive corporations, is heartbreaking, and nobody wants to see that, and everybody feels sorry about that. The county is taking care and is ensuring that people that come to work, we're going to do right by them, and I think that's a good thing. And I think that we can work with the public as we have with CSPP, to come up with ways of ensuring more fairness. That we did not have a pension unfunded liability till 8 years ago. Now it's come in because of this recession, and now we're scrambling, and now it's the first and foremost thing, but it is getting better. And so that there is light there. Also, as far as consultants go, the county cut $3 million in consultants just this past year. When we hire consultants, we do it because they will come in for a one-time job. They will get no benefits. If we hired someone to do it, they would get benefits. That's why.
Damon?
I think this really goes to the issue that we need to share risk. And I think our employees really recognize that, and we're taking concrete steps. So here's a specific comparison with the private sector and the public sector. A big issue in the private sector is healthcare benefits and retiree healthcare benefits. We know they've been slashed. We actually, in our with our employees in San Rafael, through the collective bargaining process, address that issue. We actually pay the lowest possible amount permitted by law for retiree health because the issue was so significant. We've also taken other reforms. As a result, San Rafael has actually been listed by the Marin County Grand Jury, Civil Grand Jury, as #1 in funding and dealing with its retiree healthcare system. I think we match up to the private sector there.
Thanks, Damon. Next question, Toni, you're going to lead off on this one. And the question is, if you're elected or re-elected, would you vote in favor of implementing assisted outpatient treatment, which is known as Laura's Law? Nobody will know it, most won't know what Laura's Law is. Laura's Law is a state law that says that counties can opt to decide that they can treat people who resist treatment, mental health treatment, basically. It started in Nevada County. That's a very brief explanation of what it is. But Toni, we're going to start with you. The question is, should Marin County implement or adopt Laura's Law?
Well, I don't know enough about it to make to say yes or no, but it certainly sounds worth looking into. It sounds good, and I'd like to read the whole proposal before its entirety before I would vote yes or no, but it's definitely something that should be brought to the table and discussed.
Judy?
Yes, we've had some Laura Law advocates come before our board, and I have talked with Dr. Meredith on this, and he is working with this group to come up with a solution. There are pros and there are cons like anything, and that's what we're delving in now.
Damon?
So my understanding of Laura's law is that the serious mentally ill who happen to be adjudged a danger to themselves can be committed with less due process. So it's a serious situation that I'm actually learning more about. I think only 2 counties in the state so far have actually implemented it. I'm open to discussing it. The issues on the other side, of course, are personal rights, personal freedom. On the other hand, my understanding is it's designed to address the most hardcore, serious risk to yourself situations. I'd also be very interested in talking with stakeholders, with Dr. Meredith, with my colleagues about how to address the issue. But I know it is a hot button issue, and my initial sense is it does serve some purpose, but I want to learn more.
Susan?
Well, y'all have an opportunity to learn more because NAMI's going to be doing a presentation and I'll be part of that panel. I've been working on this issue now as the chair of the Criminal Justice and Behavioral Coalition in our county on our task force. And one of the biggest concerns by people who suffer with mental illness is they don't want to go back into mandatory institutionalization without some type of due process. And yet on the same token, family members who are working on trying to get their families the help they need can be very frustrated. We have instituted a program that's kind of a Laura's Law light. There is a hotline number that families that are in crisis can contact. Some service people that will come out and help do an assessment and try to get people gently into the services. And in our STAR court, which has addressed about 200 severely mentally ill offenders who are reoffending over and over, we've reduced the recidivism in that population by 85% and psych emergency room visits by 55%. So we have some successful programs in place, and I'm happy to see you at the NAMI meeting.
Thanks, Susan. Judy, you'll start off this question. One of the most significant findings of the countywide plan's environmental impact report is that land uses and development, consistent with the 2007 countywide plan, will result in 42 significant, unavoidable adverse impacts. How would you remedy this? Judy.
Oh, great. 42, only 42.
Go ahead and address the first.
Well, the county general plan is a living document. And it took only 15 years for it to get adopted. In fact, I had just come on the Board of Supervisors in 2007 when we had county general plan hearings. Significant and unavoidable impacts are something that you meet on a case-to-case basis. And you say, look at this. If this is going to cause flooding here, but this is going to mean a cleaner stream, what's the trade-off and how do we deal with it? Some things we don't deal with and we say take that off the table. Other things you can do is we can mitigate that by building a levee, so on and so forth. So that's how you do it for each of the 42 unavoidable things.
Thanks, Judy.
Yep.
Damon?
If I can go broader picture, because I'm not off the top of my head familiar with the 42, but really what it underscores is a theme I talked about at first. We need to get out there and listen to the community. The great thing about Marin is we have a highly engaged, passionate community that I can assure you knows all 42 issues. And I'm looking forward to getting their input. The big issue right now, not surprisingly in Marin, is development. People have legitimate concerns about the direction of county policy on that issue. I'm hearing it every day as I'm walking door to door. I think we can take a different approach. I think a lot of the unmitigated consequences probably relate to development patterns in Marin. We've got to stay true to Marin County values. People move here for a reason. People stay here seemingly forever. for a reason. I want to tap into those local values in making decisions.
Thanks, Damon. Susan?
Thank you. Well, when I was first elected, I don't know how many of you remember, the issue was around San Rafael's general plan identifying 2,100 units of housing for St. Vincent Silvera and about 300,000 square feet of commercial. And people were not happy with that proposal. And I would just like to let everybody know that it's now almost 12 years later and there's still cows chewing grass out there. It hasn't been developed. In fact, when it was turned back to the county, we went through our general plan process, and the maximum amount they could put there is 10% of what was in San Rafael's general plan. And there are some big issues that we have to deal with, especially around water. We just went, phew, because we got some rain to help us fill our reservoirs. But just because we got a little this year doesn't mean we shouldn't be starting to address how we deal with water. And that's, I think, one of those 42. So we're gonna, before any specific plan comes forward, those are all issues that we're gonna have to study before a developer is allowed to build something.
Thanks, Susan. Toni?
Well, with the county-wide plan, the hot button is the coho salmon, and I'm from the San Geronimo Valley, born in Marin General and raised in San Geronimo Valley. And the EIR report of 2007 is faulty, and it needs to be revisited. And we have challenges with people potentially construction in sensitive habitats, and I think we have to have the countywide plan and the EIR reports accurate. And if we don't have accurate EIR reports and are basing our countywide plan on something that happened in 2007 that are not accurate, we need to revisit that. So again, we need to pay more attention to our EIR reports for our countywide plan.
Thanks, Toni. Next question. Damon, you can lead off on this one. What's your position on the Community Service Fund, AKA the slush fund?
I oppose it. I would do away with the Community Services Discretionary Fund. Although many of the programs that are funded are laudable, my preference would be to make the case through the ordinary budget process, build the coalitions, convince your colleagues to vote for it, and get it passed that way. I think the system as is, and arguably it's different now from the original days, still creates a situation where there's political patronage, that basically you are currying favor with segments of the community by doling out these grants. I disagree with that. I think we have to make it more above board, and therefore I oppose it.
Thanks, Damon. Susan?
Well, back in the day, years and years ago, each of the county supervisors were given about $1 million to provide services to their communities. And over the years, those budgetary dollars have shrunk to the point where after the last grand jury report, we said, as a board, that it shouldn't be at our board anymore. The county administrator is now the one who administers those small community service grants, which have been very helpful for communities who are dealing with vegetation management removal, after school programs for kids' schools, some of the homeless programs that you want in San Rafael. And they come quickly and urgently. They can't wait for a whole year budget cycle. So the administrator looks at the grants that come in and he makes the decisions based on our funding priorities and our budget plan now, and we've made those adjustments. And it's a small amount of money. It's a $300,000 allocation over the course of the whole year for those small projects.
Thanks, Susan. Toni?
I oppose the slush fund, and I won't change my spots if I'm elected. The Civil Grand Jury of 2001 report nails this 100%. There were Civil Grand Jury reports after this about the Community Service Fund or the slush fund, and but the 2001 is my favorite. The County of Marin is not a nonprofit. We do not have money to give away because we are in debt. $864 million pension liability. Have we heard that one before? The supervisors like to give away our money, and even though these programs are good, if the supervisors believe in them, they have a checkbook, write out the check. This is the good people of Novato's number third concern. Number 1 is public safety. Number 3 is government waste, and to curb the slush fund. The people of Novato are not supporting it as a whole.
Thanks, Toni. Judy?
I supported the community service fund, and I also supported the remedy that we did to tighten it up and put it under the public administrator. But my feeling on this is, who else knows their district better than the county supervisor? I meet with people every day, and they come in, Novato Spirit comes in and says, we have 10 kids who can't afford any kind of physical activity. We want to send them to judo. Today, I read stories at Head Start in Novato. There were little kids there that got money from the funding that I gave to Novato schools. Novato schools get the lowest amount of funding of any place in the county because we're a revenue district. And I took my community service funds when we were reorganizing it and gave $120,000 to Novato schools. I think that was a good move, and I think those little kids don't have a clue who Judy Arnold is, but they know they've got books and computers now.
Thanks, Judy. Next question, Susan, you'll lead off on this one. What involvement will the Marin Community Foundation have in and on your term as supervisor, presuming next term or your first term?
Well, the Marin Community Foundation has actually been a funder for some of the programs that we share in common, and especially those programs in San Rafael that are related to homelessness and housing. The Housing First program was a partnership. When we created the Health and Wellness Campus on Bellum and Kerner, we used tobacco settlement money, not taxpayer money to do that, and the foundation was a big partner in that. And now as a result, there's nobody in this county that has to go bankrupt because they get sick. And with coming into a time of the Affordable Care Act, we are now implementing one of the most seminal healthcare reform programs that's ever hit us since Medicare. And so we've hired some eligibility workers to help people navigate that system. I think it will have impacts on us across the board, including how we deal with medical retiree benefits and other health programs in our county.
Thank you very much, Susan. Toni?
The Marin Community Foundation is a nonprofit. The County of Marin is not. I'd like the Marin Community Foundation to take over the slush fund.
Thank you, Toni. Judy?
36% of the county's budget comes from the state and is often an unfunded mandate. So we have to backfill that. The Marin Community Foundation has been a great partner with the county in sharing funds with us for these programs. They did something else that they hadn't done before. During the recession, community surveys said that now traffic congestion was number 1, but number 2, instead of lack of affordable housing, it said lack of jobs. And the Marin Community Foundation came and gave money to the Marin Economic Forum, which I started, for businesses to come in to make the businesses that are here more profitable and to bring jobs into Marin County. So I thank the Community Foundation for that.
Thanks, Judy. Damon?
So the Marin Community Foundation is obviously a key part of the landscape in Marin. And I think going forward, public-private partnerships are going to be more important than ever. Gone are the days when we can just rely on government to fund all programs. One idea I'm starting to think through, and it goes to the idea of how to reduce development pressure, the idea I threw out there about converting existing housing into more affordable housing and thereby meeting some of our goals there. perhaps the Marin Community Foundation can step up and participate in that. It's something I'm very interested in speaking with them further about. I think they share similar goals.
Thanks, Damon. Next question. Toni, we're going to start with you on this one. And I'm going to try to incorporate a second question into this, so we'd be a little generous on the bell ringing, if we could, so we get as many people participating. Question, and again, we say Toni, we start off. Every Marin County city has a homeless problem. These problems appear to be getting worse. If elected, would you do anything different to the many programs that the county offers for the needy and homeless currently? The other aspect is, do you support a permanent homeless shelter? Toni.
I do agree with that, that there are more homeless people in Novato than before, and I'm hearing that when I'm going door to door, the concerns of the citizens for the homeless people. I have a homeless woman that I know in Novato, and she has called me recently. She was in middle class. She used to live in San Marin. Through a divorce and health issues, she now lives in her car. And what I would like to do differently is interview her, and she's asked to talk to me, and I want to sit down with her and other homeless people and say, what will work for you? Because we can do all these studies and statistics and whatnot, but let's go to the nuts and bolts of it. Let's go to the individuals. What is going to work for you so that you can get out of the situation that you're in? And everybody's situation is different. Every individual's situation is different. So we really need to get on a one-on-one with that. The question is, do I support a permanent shelter in Marin County? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks, Toni. Judy.
When you're a county supervisor, you have to make decisions for the broad base, the most people that would be helped by what you're going to do. The two main problems with our homeless are alcohol, drug addiction, and mental health. And that has to be dealt with. We're trying to deal with that. The cities are trying to deal with that. I do think a permanent shelter will help, but we also need to get more funding from the state, which owes us, so that we can go out into the community and that we can help the mentally ill and provide more alcohol and drug programs in this county. Because I had one woman came to our board one day and said, if you're homeless for more than 10 days, you will drink, because it's so terrible out there. And I think that we've got to take that as a lesson and go out and get the funding to add more.
Thanks, Judy. Damon?
Homelessness is ultimately a county-wide issue, and it demands county-wide solutions. San Rafael is bearing a large part of the issue, and I think we've been innovative in our programs, some of which have been mentioned. I'll also add that we have a mental health officer on the street. We've hired a police officer that is also interacting with the homeless. And we are committed to working with the county. There's, again, 3 areas where the county needs to step up. I want to scrub the mental health budget to see if there's more we can do with existing resources or whether we need additional resources. Judy mentioned Helen Vine on the chronic inebriation issue. I think we need more space right now. Part of the solution is jail cells. That's inadequate. And we do need permanent supportive housing with wraparound services. Big issue there is going to be location. Again, I feel that the county should take the lead. San Rafael is willing to work with them and with affected nonprofits. We absolutely need a permanent solution, and I'm willing to roll up my sleeves.
Thanks, Damon. Susan?
Thank you. Well, the county has taken the lead. A number of years ago, about 8 years ago, I started a countywide homeless policy coordinating committee. What we found when we were reaching out to different areas in our county was that the anchor out people in Sausalito identify themselves as Sausalito residents. And the people that are homeless in San Rafael identify themselves as San Rafael residents. About 75 of them in our one-day count have been long-time residents, many of them having gone to San Rafael High School even. About 5 years ago on our one-day count to end homelessness, we had 1,900 people that we counted as homeless. Last year, we counted 900, in no small part because of the innovative programs we have in place. Do I support a permanent homeless shelter? Yes, and the county, as I said earlier, is already funding $1 million a year for Mill Street that houses 55 people. And the problem is, where do we site it? How many of you want the homeless shelter next door to you? Okay, no hands. There, we have one. Okay, I want to talk to you after the meeting. So we're being very aggressive in our approach, but it's really hard. If we can't even cite affordable workforce housing for our families earning $65,000 a year or less, how challenging is it for us to be able to find another location for our homeless residents? And it is important, and I'm going to continue to work on it.
We found the location, we should just have to go, say, direct. It's a big search. Next question, and Judy, we're going to start with you. There are limits.
I think you just did.
Oh, we just did?
Yeah.
We'll start with Toni.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, I'll do it.
Judy. Yep. There are limits to everything. How much affordable housing is enough, especially considering that the Marin Municipal Water District is at capacity and Las Colinas Sanitary District is over capacity? Judy.
When I worked for Senator Burton, Senator Sheila Kuehl had a bill go through that I think was not signed by the governor, but what it said is every development, every housing development that comes in, one of the criteria is you have to see if there's enough water to meet that. I thought that was a good thing. I supported that. The senator supported that. I think the governor probably didn't. How much is enough? I think that's up to the communities, but I do know this. I'm working with Assembly Member Mark Levine, I just promoted him, on AB 1537, which would change Marin County's designation from metropolitan, which means they have to plan for 30 units per acre, to suburban, which you can have 20 units per acre. This, Jared Huffman tried it. I went up to Sacramento, testified. He couldn't get it out of committee. Assemblymember Levine is feeling very hopeful, and the reason why is because affordable housing advocates and organizations are supporting it this time. It comes up next week, and we'll let you know what happens. Thanks.
Thanks, Judy. Damon.
I also support AB 1537. I absolutely think that we need to reduce the default density in our communities. It's not appropriate to impose urban solutions on a suburban area like Marin. That having been said, AB 1537 is only a part of the equation. As Judy mentioned, she and others have tried mightily in the past to get it through. It has not happened. Ultimately, we need to look at our housing element and strike the right balance. We have the value of, we want people who work here to be able to have more opportunities to live here, but we have to do it in a way that makes sense for Marin. I would say that's one of the big distinguishing features between me and Supervisor Adams, is I'm looking at ways to make sure that any development that happens makes sense for our community. I have problems with the Marinwood Plaza for that reason. Again, worthy goal, but I dispute having it next to the freeway at the level of density that's being called for.
Thanks, Damon. Susan.
Thank you. Well, I was also very actively involved with the crafting of the language, and we have now support for from CSAC, League of Cities, and a number of other agencies that we didn't have before for AB 1537. If you drive along Highway 101 and you look at both sides of the freeway in San Rafael, there are 3 to 5 story apartment multifamily units along Highway 101 now that have been there for decades. Now, was that appropriate when San Rafael decided to build those? At that time, nobody seemed to argue about those. As we are going forward and we know more about air quality and about our water issues, those are going to be really important components to take into consideration as we're planning for housing going forward. Part of what we did as a county was identify 80% of our land that could not be developed. West Marin, our agricultural areas, our county parks, And the identification of the urban corridor was the area in the 1970s that we felt were appropriate for development.
Toni? Thanks, Susan.
Well, the question was very broad, because what might be good for Mill Valley might be completely different from Novato. And I think it's important to have the local control. Again, Novato has been the leader of affordable housing. We've been very welcoming, and I applaud that. I support senior housing. However, we had a development that went up, and we only have, and I have this in writing, 9 residents from Novato got into the complex. 9. So the challenge in that project was it was not advertised well to Novato residents. It was advertised everywhere else. So we need to really hold developers accountable, and if they say they're going to be there to help Novato residents, let's have that be true. Again, there has to be a balance, and this is a local issue for each city and town in Marin County to deal with, and I think we can do a better job, but we also need to look into our infrastructure, how it affects our public safety, schools, et cetera, et cetera.
Thanks, Toni. Just so the audience knows, some of the questions written have been directed to specific candidates. The ground rules we told the candidates was that they'd all have the same questions. So if you heard your question and it was aimed at one person, it's really going to be aimed at them all. And this is an example, and we're going to start with Damon. What's your background in education? What in your background in education makes you able to analyze the information and data independently presented to you and not just rely on staff? So what's your education or background that enables you to do that, Damon?
I'm glad you asked that, Dick. In 2-minute openings, it's hard to inject some bio. So I'm an attorney by training. I currently have a private practice in San Rafael and San Francisco, where I focus on representing small businesses and consumers. Before that, I was a lead attorney with the California Attorney General's office, and I actually worked on the Enron investigation. I'm very familiar with working on very complex issues. I'm also currently a professional mediator, and in that capacity, I think it's very helpful for politics to bring people together. It's a common issue. Are elected officials overly reliant on staff? I think my track record shows that while I have a good relationship with staff, it's ultimately my decision and reflective of the community's needs and desires. I'll quickly just mention my example that I threw out earlier about the downtown streets team. Staff was recommending that be cut. I realized it was not in the best interest of the community, and I stood up and protected it.
Thanks, David. Susan?
Can you repeat the question, because I think you're asking about education?
No. It's really more of a general background. Well, about your personal education, not about the education.
Oh,
schools.
okay, I thought...
So, let me just say, don't be fair.
UC
What is
Berkeley.
your background, your personal background and education, to be able to analyze information and data independently and not just rely on staff?
Well, I have a reputation at the county for reading everything. At the last budget meeting, I found a $1 error in one of the contracts from the letter, and it made everybody laugh, but I think every penny counts. I'm a nurse practitioner and a professor of nursing. My master's and doctorate were from UCSF. My clinical practice at UC was dealing with mentally ill, substance abusing pregnant women, very challenging population. So I have a lot of expertise, especially in that area. And as the one board member on the Board of Supervisors who has the health lens, I think I bring something very important to the discussions, especially as we're talking about healthcare, mental health services, children's health. When I was first on the Board of Supervisors, we had a significant number of our kids who were not covered by healthcare. I'm very proud of the fact that 10 years later, 98.5% of our children have access to affordable health care and are getting preventive services. I'm also very proud of the fact that we have a very vibrant health and wellness campus that serves the needs, all the needs of our community.
Thanks, Susan. Toni?
I attended UC Davis. I graduated from UCLA. I received my teaching credential from Sonoma State University. And one thing I think we really need to do is read everything that the staff presents before us before we vote on that. I was very involved in the housing element in the city of Novato, and we questioned staff reports like you wouldn't believe. And staff is doing the best that they can. However, they're not perfect either. They may not have the same, they may not live in Marin County, they may not live in Novato, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to read, question, question, question. I was raised in, as I mentioned before, in San Geronimo Valley, where we always have questioned authority, and that's what I'm doing now. Thanks.
Thanks, Toni. Judy?
The 10 years that I worked for 2 state senators, and especially the 8 years that I worked for the Senate Pro Tem, John Burton, he had 20, the Pro Tem of the state Senate has policy people because they can't possibly research everything and know it for all the bills coming through. John had 20 policy people that were really experts in their field. They would bring it to him, he would make the decision. When I was elected as a supervisor, I thought, you know, I'm going to run my office that way. I have 2 aides, Tanya and Leslie, and they have different areas of expertise. They research that. They bring that research to me. I then make an informed decision on what to do, and I think it works really well.
Thanks, Judy.
Hey, Dick, we've had a request that you be a little more diligent with the microphone when you ask the
Oh,
question.
I'll be a little closer to the mic, sure. Susan, you're next. It seems that environmental requirements contribute to the cost of housing, period. Are you willing to consider environmental trade-offs to make housing more affordable? Susan.
I'm not sure if that's a CEQA question or not. I know there's been a lot of complaints about how tedious and long the process is with CEQA. And, you know, in my unincorporated part of my district in the last 12 years, there has really not been any multi-unit developments of any kind. Housing for even a private developer for 1 unit can take a long time. We have right now at the county a red tape committee that's looking at ways to make the permitting process easier for people, have a better understanding about what the costs are going to be, and some acknowledgement that they're going to be able to get through the process in a certain period of time. But we don't want to throw out the good things that are part of the environmental CEQA documents that say you have to really look at some of the environmental impacts before you create proposals, especially for larger developments. I think that it's a really important concept that the state of California and some of the legislators in the state, especially in the valley areas, are trying to erode our CEQA process, and we need to be vigilant.
Thanks, Susan. Toni.
The answer is no. I don't want to sacrifice the environment. I'm against streamlining CEQA. I believe the county is now getting sued because of CEQA violations in the housing element.
Thanks, Toni. Judy.
CEQA is a vital instrument, especially to Marin County. We are the lungs of the Bay Area. We are parks and open space and ranches. And anyone that comes in and tries to change that, as they did when we first initiated A60 zoning, will be in for a big problem. However, if CEQA is used to delay a project so that the applicant has to spend years and years and years trying to build a house or a barn, I think that can have some, that's a problem, and I think it does need to be remedied. The county's red tape committee is really doing a good job, and they're going to be coming forward with their report fairly soon, where they have a cross-section of people on the committee. They're looking at everything that goes into getting a permit and how that can be easier so that someone doesn't end up paying thousands of dollars and then get a no answer when they want to put a driveway in.
Thanks, Judy. Damon.
I am not in favor of relaxing CEQA standards. This raises another issue. I think the county needs to do more to look at ways, again, putting aside AB 1537, of also looking at how we can work with state agencies to reduce the density levels that our communities are facing. I look at specifically the example of Novato, where they were able to reduce the default density from 30 down to 23. Now, the controversy is, if as a result of that, do you have to reduce the level of discretionary review of the project, which gets into CEQA? If we can do that without eliminating our local community's ability to do discretionary review, I think it's something we should look at, again, to give that local control. I'm very happy to hear there's a red tape commission. I think on home remodels, etc., we should not be holding them up with the red tape.
Thanks, Damon. Next question, Toni, we're going to start with you. Why do we have to pay consultants to find out what skills our IT department employees have? This is just one example. Why does the county employ so many outside consultants? Toni.
Well, I believe the county is consultant dependent, and we also now have a consultant approved by the supervisors. So I think it's $900,000 to revisit the computer debacle. Why? The question is why, and we need to continually ask our supervisors why, because we do have staff that can do a lot of this consultant work, and we need to stop being so consultant dependent and wasting taxpayer money.
Judy.
Well, we have glib answers, and some of them are not true. For example, the county allocated up to $300,000 to make our local transit systems, to help the transit-dependent people in this county have better transit. Only $40,000 was allocated toward a survey asking people who haven't ridden a bus what would happen if they could. Again, that was a total misstatement from my opponent, who said she spent $300,000 to ask people why they didn't ride the bus. I think if we're going to run for office, I think it's really important to be clear and to be truthful.
Damon.
I agree that the county is spending too much money on consultants. Where that really became evident to me is spending significant money on figuring out why, on a consultant to figure out why people aren't riding the bus. And I'm not saying that to point fingers, I'm just saying, look, we could use a fresh perspective right now. I think that's what I could bring to the table, and it's not coming from the standpoint of being a bomb thrower. I think I have a good relationship with the existing board, but it is more coming in and offering a fresh perspective. When I started on the city council, there had not been turnover in that body in about 12 to 16 years. I came in, was able to work with folks, yet change the dynamic. And I think that's a lot of what we need to do right now. If I have 1 second left, I'll just go back a couple questions ago. For those in the audience, two-time UC Berkeley grad. I know we have a few in the audience. So,
Go Bears.
Thanks, Damon. Susan.
So as an elected person, I would hope that in city council, I know there are contractors and consultants that are used in the city as well. And part of the reason why we use a consultant is so that we, in some ways you have a choice. Do we hire a new person that's going to be on a pension and have the salaries and the benefits and the obligation for the long term, or sometimes in our smaller jobs, we don't need to have that long-term person with the pensions and everything. So we are hiring the expertise we need to get the job done. We have a relatively new transit district. I don't know if you've seen the little green and white buses rolling around, but the Marin Transit District made the decision in their pensions to be a defined contribution program rather than a defined benefit program. And we're operating a tight budget, and we're trying to get people to change their mode from getting off of the freeways with all the congestion and using our public transit programs. I ride our bus, I also use a bike, and I hope someday there will be other options available for all of us to share that.
Thanks, Susan. This is going to be the last question from the audience that we go into the conclusions, and it's going to start with Judy. And first of all, I want to thank everybody who's written all the questions. We have more, but there just has to be a limit to every event. Judy, how do you feel about consolidating governments? With Marin's 260,000 population, why do we have so many fire chiefs police captains, etc.
I serve on the Local Agency Formation Commission, known as LAFCO. And that is the mandate of LAFCO, is to look at areas where there could be consolidation within the county. The proposal, Assembly Member Huffman changed the law so that if the sewer districts in southern Marin, where they had the terrible spill in Richardson Bay, they wanted to consolidate, and you didn't need a protest vote, you could just do it. It lost by one vote, and obviously it was a vote from somebody that represented southern Marin County, because politically it's very difficult to consolidate. And the fact that we have so many school districts in this county it boggles the mind. So it's difficult, it's possible to do. We're going to be looking at water districts next on LAFCO. That should be really fun.
Thank you, Judy. Damon?
We do need to look at shared services, regionalization, and consolidation opportunities as a way of cost savings and, frankly, delivering more effective, efficient services. San Rafael has been taking a lead, and I have to give particular regard to our fire department, which is actually taking the lead with other jurisdictions in looking at these kind of proposals. We actually now share a battalion chief with Larkspur, saving resources. We just signed a deal with the Marinwood Community Services District, where we're sharing services with Marinwood Fire. It's got to be done in the context of protecting local control and making sure that we get community buy-in. Again, one thing that makes Marin unique is our small town character. We are very intimate and familiar with the services we have. But I do think that the community, from what I understand, is ready to look at these options. Fire is a start. I know that some police services, in terms of dispatch and other services, are following suit. Does it make sense to have so many school districts? Perhaps that's a conversation we can have at some point as well.
Thanks, Damon. Susan Adams.
Thank you. When we get to the issue around local control, people feel very strongly about their local public schools. They feel strongly about what happens when you flush your toilet and where it goes, because we tried a sewer consolidation in southern Marin and it didn't work. The local people said, we like knowing who our elected people are and we're not interested. But through LAFCO, I also serve on the LAFCO, and there is a website for all these different agencies if you want to look at them. But we did manage to get through a consolidation with Southern Marin Fire. And the idea that we should be looking at how do we consolidate fire services, especially since all the hookups are the same for the hydrants. They share the training already. Now if we can start sharing some of the budget and purchasing issues, as my late colleague Supervisor McGlashan said, sometimes you have to date a little while before you get married in these things. And so, you know, people need to start building trust that their programs will be maintained at a level. Back in the day, Dixie and San Rafael tried to consolidate and was not successful.
Thanks, Susan. Toni?
Well, I think it's always important to look for ways to save money. And there has been a consolidation, as we know, of the Fairfax Police, San Anselmo Police, etc., for the Central Marin Police. And I'd like to go to them and find out how they are successful. Also, we don't have to keep on reinventing the wheel and hiring consultants. We can pick up the phone and we can call other counties and cities throughout the North Bay and through California and see what's been successful for them and emulate those successful programs, or at least bring them to the table. In addition, we can always ask more questions at the Marin County Councils of Mayors and Council Members and ask, how can we together as a community save money? And keep asking the questions and find solutions.
Thanks, Toni. Pursuant to our ground rules, we're going to conclude now with the 2-minute summation by our 4 candidates. This is in reverse order how we started. Judy Arnold will be followed by Toni Shroyer, will be followed by Susan Adams, will be followed by Damon Connelly.
Ready?
Ready?
I'm
Judy.
ready.
Thank you for the opportunity to have this exchange of views tonight. And I want to thank CSPP, Dick Spotswood, and our bell ringer for doing a great job. I invite you to visit my website at judyarnold.com, or you can email me at judyarnold@earthlink.net. If you are kind enough to give me another term, I will continue to partner with law enforcement to keep us safe, which is a top priority. Sheriff Bob Doyle, District Attorney Ed Barbarian, County Fire Chief Jason Weber, former Nevada Police Chief Joseph Crines, the Marin County Deputy Sheriff's Association, and Marin professional firefighters have endorsed me so that we can continue working together for public safety. Please look at the endorsements on the back of my brochure in the hallway. In addition to these, I am so proud to have the endorsement of Superintendent of Education Mary Jane Berg. I will work to continue the funding for the Novato Narrows, finish the promise of SMART, give our schools a hand every chance I get, and fight to expand jobs in the county. I love my job as your supervisor representing Marin, and I ask for your vote on June 3rd, and thank you all for coming.
Judy Arnold, thank you. Toni Shroyer.
I want to thank all of you for coming to this debate. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate CSPP of organizing it. And I want to do 3 shout outs to, everybody's a VIP here, but to my husband, the love of my life, Jim Shroyer, who's been a great partner through this campaign, our son Luke, my mom Sally, who's the best mother in the world, and my best friend Tina, who I've known since I was 5, and we grew up in the San Geronimo Valley, so they're all here today. Judy Arnold has been a career politician for decades. She has plenty of time to fully develop her political skills and instincts and to learn all the basics of a supervisor's job. However, in recent years, her experience has not translated into representation and in action. At this particular point in time, the residents of Novato and the County of Marin want more than an agent for the special interests. That has been said to me over and over again as I've walked door to door in my district. I've listened to the people's concerns. I know they are less satisfied with their current representative on the board. My biggest hope is that I will have the opportunity to represent their interests and to address the issues that matter most to them, the good people of Novato, not the special interest groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Toni Shroyer. Susan Adams.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be in front of you tonight. The show's going to continue on the road over the next few weeks if you want to have a repeat demonstration. And in closing, I just want to say I've been a proud resident of Marin County for more than 25 years. I raised my children here as a single mom, and I probably couldn't afford to buy the unit that I'm in now if I tried to get into the housing market now. So my children aren't able to live here. Your children and grandchildren are probably certainly struggling with this. And you might be surprised that, Damon and I have been friends and colleagues for a long time. We've even campaigned for each other on occasion. And policy-wise, there's probably not a lot of difference. We both have labor support. We both care passionately about our community. We both have raised our children here. But what I bring differently to the table is the leadership and the experience and a long list of accomplishments. I'm not only listening to my community and building bridges, I'm actually problem solving and implementing some really important programs that have benefited this community. And I hope you'll go to my website, susanadams.us, and my home phone number is listed, so you can call me. I won't answer after 10 o'clock at night, but I promise you I'll return your call within 24 hours because I do try to stay connected with my community. I'm out on community cleanup days, on open space days. It's my opportunity to hear from my community what's going on and what we need to work on. I have an open door policy, and the planning process that we're working on in Marinwood, I know right now there's concerns, and our community showed out in force on Saturday to list all of those. Those will be studied, they'll be vetted, and at the end of the day, we're going to have a process that I think most people will agree will have been open, fair, and will have implemented what the community has sought. I am really proud of the service, and I hope you give me the opportunity to serve you for one more tour of duty. Thank you.
Susan Adams, thank you. Damon Connelly.
Well, thank you, everyone. I echo very much appreciating you coming out this evening and engaging. We all know Marin is a unique, phenomenal place to live. That's why we moved here, and that's why people stay here. But there is a sense that we can do better, which I share. We've talked about the significant issues tonight that are now facing our county. The fiscal issues and fiscal health of the county, development, and how we really are going to preserve what we have in Marin and strike the right balance in terms of growth. How does that affect critical infrastructure like transportation? And how can the county step up more and work with its cities on crucial issues like homelessness, environmental issues, and even climate change, where we play such a significant local role in combating a huge problem that's affecting our society. Ultimately, what I offer is a fresh perspective combined with the track record and experience to get the job done. I'm running on a campaign that I'm calling Keeping the Promise of Marin. What it means is decision-making based on local values, informed by collaborative, community-based dialogue, resulting in effective, responsive local government on behalf of our communities. Let's throw in another piece, innovation. We have such a passionate, engaged community. It makes the job interesting, where I get to interact with you on your ideas. The way I'm going to go forward is the way I've been serving, and that is holding town halls, getting out into the community. Ultimately, this is not about left or right, it's about moving forward. So I thank you again. I've got door hangers in the back.
Thank you, Damon. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Judy. And thank you, Toni. We're blessed in this county to have 4 qualified candidates. Over the years, we've had races where people perhaps didn't have the qualities and experience that these folks do. I think they deserve some thanks for stepping up. I want to thank the citizens of the state of the country, particularly Jody Morales and their board, for hosting tonight's event. Deep Well, who's on their board, but who's absolute neutral bell ringer. That cowbell bell is dangerous. I want to remind you to vote. There's an election coming up, and you guys got to vote. You took off your time tonight to come, and you're citizens who are leaders in the community. Tell your friends to vote. The higher the turnout, the more representative the election will be. In conclusion, I ask you only 2 things. Very reasonable thing. Read my column in the Independent Journal. Read it 7 days a week. And on election night, I'm happy to say to all of you, we'll be broadcasting full election live returns on Channel 22, your public broadcasting station for the North Bay, starting at 8:30. So thanks for all coming tonight. I know you have to run. I want you to note we ended a bit early. Thanks, everybody. Night-night.